All right, good afternoon, David.
Hi.
Oh, will you please introduce yourself for my classmates?
Sure. I'm David Wolff. I am the District Coordinator for Gifted and Talented Education here in Austin Public Schools.
Okay, and how long have you been the district coordinator for Austin Public Schools?
This is my second year as the coordinator. Prior to this, I was in the classroom for over 10 years.
What grade did you teach?
Second, third, and fourth grades.
Oh, okay. And what made you decide to go into gifted and talented?
I would say that I've always had an interest in servicing students that maybe had weren't necessarily getting services in the regular or additional services through the day. So a special place in my heart for the special ed, ELL, gifted students that I know that need additional support beyond me as a classroom teacher. So giftedness kind of just came out of the blue, and I've had the gifted clusters in my classroom for several years. I've always been intrigued by how they learn, what information they can share with me. So when this opportunity came, I couldn't pass it up.
Okay. And how long has Austin Public Schools had a gifted and talented program in place?
I know that it's been long-standing in the district. It's been more informal. About even 10 years ago, it was more of a just in the cluster model where we put students of high ability in the same classroom so that the teacher can differentiate for them a little bit better that way. And then just in the past 5 years, we've had more of a formal intervention type format where we service students with interventions in addition to what happens in the classroom.
Okay. All right. Okay. As the gifted and talented program continues to grow and expand from research, what are some positive changes that you've seen in a gifted and talented program here in Austin?
I think some of the great changes that I've noticed is the fact that we have our positions as interventionists that we are adding on in addition to what happens in the classroom. So with extensions and replacement opportunities with kids that way. Using data much more efficiently to really find our students and then use the data to help us make our instructional decisions. And the inclusiveness, I think, is a really important part that we've looked at, recognizing that giftedness manifests differently in different students depending on their culture at home, whether they're from low income or from a minority group, that there's giftedness in all groups and that we have to find those kids some way.
What are some ways, okay, we have a gifted and talented program, but if you were a classroom teacher that did not have this available, what are some ways that you would discover a gifted and talented student?
To discover them, definitely looking at how they are different from the other students. And giftedness, we always say that you're going to compare them to their like peers. So if we're trying to find some of the gifted students, we're looking for those precocious students that are always curiously asking more, willing to dig deeper into certain areas of topics. They're also the students that would lost my train of thought. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay.
They're going to be the students that catch on to procedures and in math procedures and math solving problems one time and then it's retained.
Okay.
So they don't need the practice over and over. They've got it.
Okay.
So those are some just quick things that a classroom teacher could be looking for when looking for some of those kids that if they don't have the additional support.
Okay. So for districts that don't have gifted and talented programs, and I know a classroom teacher needs to learn how to differentiate for them within the classroom setting as well, but for districts that don't have this available to them, what are some suggestions that you would have for the teachers to address their gifted and talented student?
I think looking big picture, system wide, I think administrators have a big piece in this as well. And if I mentioned clustering before. Clustering is when you take students of like ability or like achievement and you put them in the same classroom. So instead of spreading all the high kids across every classroom in the grade level, so everyone gets their high kid and everyone gets their middle kids and low kids. You put students of like ability or need in the same classroom, so they are with like peers. So they have students that think like them, behave like them, and they can have those conversations with each other. That is a big intervention in itself.
Okay.
Same with on the low end as well, and putting your ELL students of similar needs. Then they have peers that they can relate to.
Okay.
Professional development is always a big piece coming from a system-wide. Classroom-wide, teachers, I think, can't emphasize the importance of purposeful pre-assessment, and that's good for all students, no matter if they're low or high ability, but you can figure out what they already know before you start a unit, and then you can start differentiating your unit right away. So if you know that over half your class knows how to do this, you can start planning enrichment or extension activities for those students, or how to apply these concepts in a much deeper way. And then the students that don't know this, you can plan your activities that way as well. So, but pre-assessing to pre-assessing is worthless unless you really act upon it and use it as an instructional guide.
Okay.
Giving choice is always a very important piece. When you're allowing kids to choose the product that they want to demonstrate their knowledge, whether they can act it out or draw a picture or make a diorama, always allowing choice. You can use multiple intelligences to help figure out kids' strengths and their gift in order to demonstrate what they know.
Okay.
There's many different ways that they can just offer choice
Okay.
to differentiate. And then just going deeper instead of adding more work to a student, make it more complex. Like I said, you don't need to give more homework to a student that's already showing proficiency. Just make it more complex and challenge them to use what they know in a much deeper way.
Okay. Okay. What would you suggest would be some things that you would never say to a gifted and talented student? And I know we've talked about a lot with my classmates about being sarcastic in the classroom or maybe joking around too much, or are there just, which I think are good, just best practices for any teacher, but specifically for a gifted and talented student, what would you just recommend you just stay away from these types of comments or conversations?
Quite often it's gifted students, things come easy to them. So teachers typically would say, man, you're smart, this is just going to be so easy for you. Just assuming that they already know what to do, and that puts so much pressure on the gifted student that they realize people think I already know this. Maybe they don't know that certain topic, and they have that extra pressure that they have to be perfect and that they have to be right on everything, and that's something you should never say into any child.
Right.
Trying to think of some other things.
Well,
they'll come.
it'll come. Okay, so we'll close here with, oh dear. Sorry, classmates, now I'm forgetting what I'm supposed to say.
There's an edit button, right?
Yes, some strategies that a classroom teacher can use to connect with their gifted and talented student. And I know, and I'm kind of referencing here more like the whole like getting to know you and teachers creating some sort of one-on-one relationship with each student in the classroom. But if maybe the teacher feels maybe a little threatened by their gifted and talented student, how can they form a relationship where that student also feels very welcome into their classroom?
Mm-hmm. And giftedness will manifest itself in different ways. I always think of Star Wars, that there's the golden child that is going to always act perfect. They're going to sit and they're going to listen to everything you say. And then there's the gifted child that's going to be a little bit more of the wild child. So I always think of R2D2 as your wild child gifted, and your C3POs as the golden child. Just so happened that our C3PO is golden, so it's easier to remember.
Right.
But they're going to sit there, and they're going to be those easy students to get along with because they're the teacher pleasers. The R2D2s are going to be the ones that manifest their giftedness in a more negative way. And so they're going to be the ones who are going to nag you with those questions, or they're going to correct you in front of the class. And those students are a little bit harder to build those relationships with. And I think just recognizing that those students have those gifts and not punishing them for correcting you in front of the class, but maybe giving them strategies and offering that one-on-one time just to say, you know what, this was an inappropriate way of doing this. Next time you can write those, you know, my mistakes down on paper, and we can talk about how I can correct that for the next time. So just recognizing and valuing the gifts, even though they might be demonstrated in a more negative way. Again, clustering students is so important because then they have kids that are like them, and then they don't feel isolated. When a student is isolated, sometimes the only person that thinks like them is the teacher themselves. And so intellectually, it's the teacher and that student, and then they are isolated. They can become withdrawn, and then they just beg and need talk time with the teacher. And the teacher doesn't have that much time. So if there were other students that were like them, that gives them an intellectual peer that they could be grouped with when they're talking and solving problems.
Okay.
And then I would say, especially for a lot of kids that are maybe perfectionists, don't focus on grades. Quite often, to get the presidential award, you have to have straight A's all year. To me, it's what you put into it and how hard you are working, and even if it's above grade level. If you're getting a B on above grade level work, that's still, to me, much more beneficial and worthwhile than doing grade level standard work and getting an A, because that's not challenging them to learn more. What's challenging them is to be above grade level. And so, don't focus on grades or letters, just focus on what's challenging them to continue to learn and to be cognitively interacting and engaged in learning every day. So.
Cool. All right.
I also thought in one more.
Okay. Woohoo!
Is don't make them be the leaders.
Ooh.
Just because they are intellectually smarter, and maybe sometimes they might be those golden children, so they act a little bit more mature. They're typically the mini teacher, and just go help the kids that don't get it, and that puts on a lot of extra pressure on them to have to be perfect. And then it's that weird social issue of having to be above the other students when they are looking to be peers and equals with their peers, and not the mini teacher correcting other students. So don't use them as that second teacher in the classroom.
Awesome. David, thank you so much. I really appreciate this.
No
Thank
problem.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.